I want to be able to talk more about you running away, because I've had other people on the podcast who have been in some of these centers, and most of whom have tried to escape, sometimes successfully, but still they couldn't go back home. And other times not successfully. And then when they went back, when it wasn't successful, things were ramped up for them because they had run away, and they were seen somehow as more troubled, even though it's a natural inclination to want to be able to get your freedom back. So I think, in fact, I remember learning years ago, there was this diagnosis given to slaves who tried to run away. There was I don't know if he was a clinician or not sure, maybe just a physician, but there was a term, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's drapetomania or drapetomania. And that was the diagnosis given to slaves who were trying to get free. And so it was pathologized. So, which is so mind-bending. And, but, the people who brought them into slavery, that wasn't pathologized. People taking away other people's lives, that's fine. But when someone says, I need to be able to breathe, I need to be able to breathe freely in this world and be free. And that's considered, diagnosable, which just shows about the kind of thinking at the time. But that kind of thinking still exists in other frameworks. So how were you viewed or seen after you escaped and needed to go back?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because one of the things that I would say most survivors from programs would say is one of the main things you can't talk about is how much you hate the program, right? Like that's resistance, right? You're being clinically resistant. If you're, I couldn't say, hey, I hate being screamed at 3 times a week for 3 hours at a time, or I hate being put up in front of a room and being made to perform in front of my peers and calling that therapy, or I hate being put in costumes and going through crazy workshops. And so you can't talk about like the obvious traumatic experience that's happening in front of you. And so I would say similarly, even with leaving, like, there's no avenue to talk about why you're leaving. And I will say, the entire time I was there, I didn't have one conversation with my parents that was not monitored by a staff member. So it wasn't like there was all this thing to say, hey, this is awful, or hey, this person is being inappropriate with me, or any of that. I couldn't do that. And my family was told not to believe anything that I said. That was sort of standard, was they're going to run away. They're going to tell you that we're abusing them. We're going to tell you that they're going to tell you it's awful here. And so they were really on the front end, pretty front loaded with not to listen to anything that, we would have to say as adolescents. So we were pretty disenfranchised as far as our sense of being heard or, trustworthy, or we were really kind of undermined already because we were struggling at home, right? So we were youth having a hard time for various reasons, most of them trauma related, right? Which we would hear all about people's trauma while we were there. And, but we were really pathologized as sort of bad, screw up kids. And so when I left, it was just sort of more evidence to support the screw up. I think, I was pretty good initially at being able to look pretty good. So you'd even get yelled at and indicted for that, right? You'd be a look good. So if you looked too good, you would get yelled at. If you were resistant, you get yelled at. There was just no escape. So, but I was one of those people that learned pretty quickly how to kind of comply with the system, right? Like I figured out really early on by something that happened that, oh, wow, this really isn't safe. And like what you need to do is walk this line or you're going to end up, it's going to be worse for you. And I watched kids that really rebelled and pushed back. And initially I didn't do that. Actually, I was pretty much, okay, I was go with the flow until I got backed in the corner. And then I was, would fight with all I had. But like normally I would sort of try to be, I was Southern and I would be friendly and polite as long as I didn't get pushed too hard. So when I left, it was pretty surprising for people because I had been there over a year, like maybe about 14 months out of a 2-year program. So I had been there. I was in the upper level of the school. I was sort of mentoring younger kids and I just walked out one day. And part of that was because things had I was sort of in a pressure cooker and some of the inappropriateness had got worse and things were like my danger signal was going off.